All right, let's deep dive into Malaysian Pacific Industries. You probably know them better as MPI. We're going to break down their latest financials and really see what it all means, especially for Malaysian investors.
Well, and it's important to remember that MPI is a pretty major player in the semiconductor world. They're listed on Bursa, Malaysia,
Right.
and a subsidiary of the Hong Leong Group. Their main thing is manufacturing services
Right.
for semiconductor packaging and testing.
Yeah.
And they also produce lead frames.
Right. So that puts them in a good spot, with this market that's just booming right now.
Absolutely.
So we're looking at their 2024 financials, and it looks like, well, they've had quite a year. What we really want to do today is compare all this to last year, see how they measure up against the previous quarter, and most importantly, figure out what the opportunities are for investors, like yourself.
Yeah, and I think a good place to start is with the profitability.
Okay.
Their profit for the year was a solid RM 233,248,000. Which, to put that in perspective, that's more than double what they made last year.
Wow.
Back then, it was only RM 108,148,000.
That's a pretty significant jump.
Yeah.
So it sounds like they're doing something right.
Yeah, that's a big indicator that things are moving in the right direction.
How about earnings per share?
Well, those also saw a pretty nice bump, up from 30.84 sen in 2023 to 82.65 sen this year.
That's a significant jump as well.
Yeah, and for potential investors, that kind of strong, profitable growth, that's a good sign. That gets people excited.
Yeah, for sure. Now, revenue tells a slightly different story, right? It was RM 2,094,856,000, which is a little bit higher than last year. But RM 2,044,721,000 was last year. So not as dramatic as the profit increase,
Right.
but still an increase.
Yeah, and I think it's important to point out that a big chunk of that revenue,
Right.
like about RM 1,081,127,000 of it,
Okay.
comes from Asia.
Oh, wow.
The U.S. contributed about RM 420,999,000. And Europe chipped in RM 592,730,000.
Yeah.
So that kind of, heavy weighting towards the Asian markets, that might mean some unique opportunities and, potentially some challenges.
Right, yeah. Especially for Malaysian investors, right?
Right.
Now, let's talk about dividends. They had 2 interim dividends this year, 10 cents per share back in December of 2023, and then a little bit more generous, 25 cents a share in June of this year, 2024.
Right.
However, there was no final dividend recommended for the 2024 financial year.
Right. And that's not uncommon. Sometimes companies will hold back on those earnings
Okay.
and reinvest them or, use them for other strategic things. It happens, but it's something to watch.
Right.
See what they do with those dividends.
Keep an eye on it.
Yeah.
Okay, so we got to compare this year to last year.
Right.
Obviously, the profit, that's a huge jump. What do you think's driving that?
I think it's, partly the global demand for semiconductors. That's been on the rise.
Yeah.
And MPI is in a good position to, to really take advantage of that.
Okay.
And we can't forget they're part of the Hong Leong Group, which gives them a lot of, resources stability.
Yeah, that definitely helps. Now, looking at it quarter by quarter, is this kind of growth consistent throughout the year or is it seasonal? What are we seeing there?
Well, if we look at the numbers for each quarter, what we see is, consistent performance pretty much across the board.
Oh, interesting.
Which tells me it's sustainable.
Okay.
This isn't just like a one-time blip. This looks like it has the potential to continue.
That's great, especially for investors, right?
Yeah, that consistency is really, that's a reassuring thing.
So let's think about this from the investor standpoint. You're in Malaysia, you're thinking about investing in MPI. What are the opportunities here?
Well, at first glance, their financials look really good. I mean, they're strong. They're pointing towards, the possibility of growth in the future. And hopefully that translates to a decent return on investment.
Right.
Which at the end of the day is what we all want.
For sure.
Yeah.
But let's, dig a little deeper.
Yeah.
What should a smart Malaysian investor really be thinking about before jumping in?
Well, I think it's important to remember that the semiconductor industry, it can be a bit volatile.
Sure.
I mean, it's affected by the global economy, by advances in technology, even things happening in global politics. All of that can have an impact.
Right.
So, things might look good now, but you have to be ready.
Be prepared.
In case the market shifts.
You don't want to just invest and forget about it. You got to keep up with things.
You got to stay informed. You got to be able to adapt.
Exactly. What else should we be thinking about?
Well, competition.
Okay.
It's a tough industry. Lots of companies all over the world are fighting for that market share. So you have to look at how MPI stacks up against the competition.
Right. See where they are in the whole picture.
Exactly. And especially look at the competition here in Malaysia. Who are they up against on their home turf?
Yeah, that's really important. So research is key.
Absolutely.
Investors have got to really understand where MPI fits in that bigger picture.
Yeah. You can't just go on what you see on the surface. You got to dig.
Exactly.
Yeah, you really got to understand, who they're up against. And while we're talking about understanding, where MPI fits, we should look at their subsidiaries.
Okay.
They have a bunch of them all over the place. It shows you they have an international reach.
It sounds like they've got their hands in a lot of different things.
They do. So for folks listening here in Malaysia, Carsem, SDN.BHD is a big one. They're right here in Malaysia. And they focus on the same things MPI does, really. Manufacturing services for semiconductor packaging and testing.
So they're a big part of MPI's whole operation.
Yeah.
What about the other subsidiaries? Where are they and what are they doing?
Well, there's Carsem Holdings Limited. That one's in Bermuda. They're an investment holding company.
Bermuda. That's interesting. Why Bermuda?
Financial strategy. Bermuda's known for having a good tax environment.
Yeah.
A lot of holding companies set up there to try and, make the most of their profits.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Maximize those returns. What about the other international ones?
Okay, so there's Carsem Holdings, HK Limited. In Hong Kong, they handle sales and marketing and also some investment holding. And then in China, there are two big ones. Carsem Semiconductor, Suzhou Co., Ltd.
Yeah.
That one's in manufacturing. And then there's Carsem Advanced Technology, Suzhou Ltd. And they're getting ready to do basically the same thing, manufacturing. And then back here in Malaysia, there's Dynacraft Industries, SDN.BHD, another subsidiary. They do lead frame production.
So they've got quite a network going on. Worldwide, how does that help MPI? Especially for, somebody investing from Malaysia.
Well, I think it shows you they're diversified. They're not putting all their eggs in one basket.
Right.
They're involved in different economies all over the world. That can help protect them if
no.
one region, has a downturn or something. And it also means they might be able to, get into new markets, new opportunities for growth.
Yeah. In today's world, you've got to be connected, right?
Absolutely.
All right. Let's switch gears for a minute. Let's talk about something every investor wants to know about: debt.
Right.
What's the situation there with MPI?
Well, that's a really important question. And the good news is their debt to equity ratio is, it's zero, nothing.
Oh, wow.
Which means basically they've got more assets than liabilities, which is a good thing. It means they're, it suggests they're financially stable, managing things well.
So they're not drowning in debt.
No.
That's good to hear.
Yeah.
Okay, but what about their cash flow? Are they actually, making enough money to keep things running, to grow?
Well, their cash flow statement is really positive, actually.
Oh, okay.
They're generating a lot of cash from their operations, which is that's a big sign that their business model is sustainable. It means they can, put money back into growing the business, keep paying those dividends,
Right.
And, ride out any bumps in the road if the economy gets a little shaky.
That's always a good sign. Profitable, and they've got good cash flow.
Exactly. It's a good foundation.
But we got to be realistic, right? Every investment has some risks. What should Malaysian investors be aware of when it comes to MPI? What are some of the, maybe the red flags?
Well, one thing to keep in mind is that the semiconductor industry, it's cyclical.
Right.
There are ups and downs, booms and busts. It's really influenced by, the global economy, by technology, by what's happening in politics around the world.
Wow, so a lot of things affect it.
Yeah. So it's not, set it and forget it. Investors have got to stay informed, got to be ready to change course if they need to.
Be flexible.
Exactly.
What else? What other things should investors be thinking about?
Well, we talked about competition before. And it's serious. Companies are always trying to come up with the next big thing,
Right.
trying to grab more of the market. So MPI has to stay ahead of the game. They've got to keep innovating, investing in research and development.
If they don't keep up with the technology.
They'll fall behind.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that could be a problem.
Definitely. And then there's always the risk of, problems with the supply chain globally. I mean, we've seen it.
We have.
Pandemics, lockdowns, political stuff, all of that can disrupt things. And MPI, they rely on a global supply chain. So they're, they could be vulnerable to those kinds of things.
That's a good point. Okay, so let's bring this back to Malaysia.
Okay.
What makes MPI stand out As a Malaysian company in this global industry, what are their advantages? What are the challenges?
Well, one advantage is that they're here. They have manufacturing facilities here, they have suppliers here, and that actually helps protect them
Okay.
from those global supply chain issues we were talking about.
Oh, I see. So it's good to be local?
Yeah, shorter supply lines, less money spent on transportation, and it's good for the Malaysian economy, too.
Right, right. So they've got that going for them. And they're also connected to the Hong Leong Group, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that gives them financial stability, and access to a whole network of people in the Malaysian business world. That's a big help when you're trying to, make things happen here.
So they've got a good support system.
They do.
But are there any downsides to being a Malaysian company?
I think one challenge could be that the Malaysian market for semiconductors, it's not that big compared to some of the big players, like China or the US.
Right.
So that might limit how much they can grow here in Malaysia. They might have to rely more on exports.
So to really succeed, they got to be able to compete globally.
Exactly. But that means, they're exposed to things like changes in global demand and currency exchange rates, things they can't really control.
That's a tough spot to be in. So it sounds like MPI is trying to balance things using their strengths here in Malaysia, but also dealing with the complexities of the global market.
Right. It's a balancing act.
So we've talked about their financials, their reach globally, the good and the bad about being a Malaysian company. But there's one more thing we haven't really touched on yet. The people in charge, the management. Who's running the show at MPI?
Well, the report mentions a couple of key players. The chairman of the board is YBH Datuk Kwek Leng San,
Okay.
and he's involved with some other companies, too, within the Hong Leong Group.
Oh, so he's got a lot of experience.
It seems like it. He knows the Malaysian business world pretty well.
Yeah, that's reassuring. A real veteran. Who else is, helping to steer MPI?
The group managing director is Mr. Manuel Zaraza Brandilas. He handles the day-to-day operations and makes those big strategic decisions.
So both the chairman and the managing director are connected to other Hong Leong companies. Interesting.
Yeah, it's like a close-knit kind of leadership structure.
Okay.
Very collaborative.
That could be a good thing, right?
Definitely. They can share knowledge. They've probably got a shared vision for the whole group. And they've got access to more resources.
Just like a built-in support system. Okay, so let's sum it up. Experienced leadership, strong financials, a global presence, and a unique spot in the Malaysian market. What's the final word? Is MPI a good investment for Malaysians?
Based on everything we've seen, MPI looks like a solid opportunity. Financially, they're in great shape. They seem to be positioned well for growth.
Right.
And they've got the power of the Hong Leong Group behind them.
But as we've said, there are always risks. What are the most important things for people to think about before investing? What should they be really paying attention to?
Do your homework. Really, don't just skim the surface. Get into those financial statements. Look at how they're doing compared to the competition.
Especially here in Malaysia, right?
Exactly. And the biggest thing, make sure any investment you make aligns with your goals and your risk tolerance. How much risk are you comfortable with?
Make smart decisions.
Absolutely.
This is really just the beginning, right? It's a good starting point, but talking to a financial advisor is always a good idea, especially someone who knows the Malaysian market.
Couldn't agree more. They can help you figure out, what the risks and rewards might be. Make sure MPI is the right fit for you. And remember, this industry changes fast.
Yeah, technology moves quickly.
So keep learning. Stay up to date on trends in the industry, the global economy. It all matters.
Well, there you have it. A deep dive into MPI. Looks like a company with real potential. But like with any investment, think it through. Do your research, especially for our listeners in Malaysia. Understand how MPI works both here and on the global stage. That's key.
One last thing to think about. As the semiconductor world keeps changing, how will MPI's position as a Malaysian company help them succeed? They've got local knowledge, global connections, something to ponder as you decide whether to invest.